Hey, kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to another episode of Big Hairy News. Kia ora, Choo Choo Magoo.
Kia ora, Pat. Fuck, what are we going to talk about tonight, mate?
I don't know.
Like,
Nothing's
not a
really
lot
been
of stuff
happening.
going on.
Not much going on at the moment. No, I'm not entirely sure. How are you, man? How's your weekend?
Not too bad. Just pretty standard, my end. It's freezing here at the moment. It's horrible and miserable.
Yeah. You know what I'm going to say to that? I just like lighting the fire. Fire
Yeah,
on
there
at
we
1
go.
o'clock in the afternoon.
Pat likes to burn things,
Yeah.
stare into the fire, and have his
Yeah.
thoughts.
Well, tonight, whānau, we are going to be talking about Simon Watts and his train wreck of an interview on Q&A, promising New Zealand that there are methane inhibitors that are going to be coming, which is going to help the agricultural sector. Then when challenged that most companies aren't saying those are going to be available until 2039, it starts to fall apart there and get worse. So yes, it's a bit of a nightmare. Also, Health New Zealand, or Te Whatu Ora's board, has been sacked. We'll have a quick look at that. But something else I only just learned about tonight. So there's one part of the political news story that is a bit fresh, but we'll have a good chat about it, is Mr. Luxon has also said, you know how I like the journalists like to talk to me? I don't want to do that as much. So I'm going to stop doing that as much.
Think about how much time that frees up for activities.
Yeah. I just hope that all those same people that lost their minds when our then Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern stopped guaranteeing News Talk ZB time, hope all those same actors and actresses are going to go mental over Mr. Luxon going, I don't think I'll talk to you guys anymore as much. I don't want to. And of course, big news around Trump in the weekend. We didn't go live on Friday, and I'm so glad we didn't go live on Friday for that ridiculous speech that Donald Trump made. I watched it with the guys from Majority Report. Sam Cedar and Emma Vigland were doing a watch along. And even them, 2/3 of the way through it, were going like, why do we have to watch this? Complaining that Melania was allowed to leave and they had to stay. Which I thought was a beautiful, because it was possibly one of the worst things that there's ever been done. It's the longest acceptance speech of anyone ever at a conference, and it was just awful. We had one job to do: try and be like a normal human being for about 20 minutes and get the hell out of town, and you'll win. And he turned into Donald Trump of old, and anyway. Or maybe we'll hold this, Chewy, because we are got Robert Patman coming on. We're going to talk about this. Do you want to offer something now, or should we just go have a chat to Robert and bring all this
I
in?
just want to say, even regardless of that, even before that speech, the Republican National Congress was the most insane event I've ever seen.
Yeah, a very, very strange thing. I guess before we go, we can get this super chat done by Tafari. Thank you for that, $5 super chat. Don't worry, National will protect us from the planet warming with their cold hearts. Oh, quite cutting. That's satire. That's what that is, Chewy. That's satire. All right, let's get into it, because we want to talk, we've got kind of 2 or 3 parts of this conversation coming up. We're going to talk to Professor Robert Patman about the announcement today by Biden in the Trump speech. And then after that, we want to have a look at some of the things, in particular, the Midas Touch network has been doing today, because there's some fascinating stuff coming out about Trump. So let's welcome to the show from the University of Otago, Professor Robert Patman. Robert, thanks so much for joining us again. Haven't seen you for a while. Lovely to see you.
Oh, good evening, Pat. Good evening, Chewy. It's great to
The
be
only
with you.
question that matters is, do you have your heat pump on, or have you got the fire going?
I've got neither, actually, at the moment. I've moved into the study at home, and heat pumps are on the other rooms. So yeah, it's heat pumps are being used.
Yeah. All right. Fair enough. So, Robert, it was a really interesting weekend in the world of American politics. Why don't we have a look at that Republican National Convention, whatever it's called, RNC, on Friday? And have you got any thoughts around that? That went on through the week, but of course on Friday afternoon we watched Trump's acceptance speech, which was long and promising to bring the country together in the first 5 to 8 minutes, and then the next hour and 20 minutes talking about crazy Nancy and the DNC using the courts against me and all that kind of stuff. What was your takeaway from it?
Yeah, basically the same as yours. I think for the first maybe 10, 20 minutes, he tried to reflect a sort of more national approach. He
Yeah.
tried. I think he said that divine intervention has saved his life. He's brushed with death for the attempted assassination, and but he reverted to type within about, I think, 20 minutes or so. And as you say, the rest was a bit of a Trump standard stump speech, really.
Yeah.
After that, it was, he's the big victim, and so are his followers, and the global elite is manipulating and up to its usual machinations. And yeah, I mean, it was the standard Trump popular speech from after about the 20-minute mark onwards. It was almost a schizophrenic speech. It was almost in two parts. But yeah, I mean, I don't think Mr. Trump can change. I think his speechwriters may have been enormously hopeful that or some of them might have been hopeful that they could have used the shocking attempted assassination attempt, this shocking assassination attempt to, make Trump more appealing to a wider constituency in the United States. But I think Mr. Trump just, he's made his way by being a populist and presenting himself as the authentic voice of the people, and the people, inverted commas, because he's after all a billionaire. He's not one of the ordinary people, but he plays this role, and he also, it's only Mr. Trump can save America. So, and Mr. Biden, who's now we know now that he's not going to be running, but he didn't know that during the speech. And I think that Trump it was quite a low energy performance, which may reflect the events that he'd been subjected to in the last 7 days or so prior to the speech. I thought it was quite low energy. It was very long. And people worry about Mr. Biden's declining cognitive powers, but I'm just wondering whether, you could also raise question marks about Mr. Trump's judgment. That's the longest acceptance speech, I think,
in the history of it. Yeah. Yep.
And the fact that people started leaving was perhaps a bit of a cue for him to wrap it up, but he just went on.
The first 20 minutes was probably the script writer's amount, and then the next hour and 10 was probably him rambling. And like all he had to do was to have that first 20 minutes, say, God bless America, and walk off stage, and he would have been ahead. I mean, like we were saying last week, as many people I think were saying, Robert, that, it's a strange, and I apologize if some people find this offensive, but a bit of a golden ticket he was given with that near miss, because in times of strife, the country rallies around you, whether it's John Key in the earthquake, or whether it's Jacinda in COVID, or whether it's George W. Bush in 9/11. The only popular vote that the American right has won in the past 30 years is 2004, after the country rallied round a wartime president. And to use an American adage, he fumbled at the 1 yard line. He had this opportunity to basically solidify himself as the front runner, and to solidify himself as the unifier in chief, and he actually couldn't do it. It's not possible for him to do.
No, but I think also part of his appeal to his considerably, quite substantial base, is his anger. I mean, a lot of people who support Trump are angry. They feel life has not been kind to them. And in many cases, that's why, if you break down his support, it's coming from people, many of whom, some of whom have got 2 or 3 jobs and are struggling to make ends meet. And in a sense, that anger that he expresses, sometimes quite eloquently, I think strikes a note with some people. And I think the thing about Trump is that if he became a unifier, I'm not sure he thought this through, but I think instinctively he may feel uncomfortable about that role. I mean, when he became president, that was one of the greatest opportunities. I remember reflecting on his inaugural speech in 2017 and thinking, having won the election, he's now going to become a great unifier and be a magnanimous president. But he did. He spoke about carnage and God knows what during his inaugural speech. So I agree with you, Pat. I think he just can't help himself, and
Yeah,
I
he
think
can't do it.
partly it is a way of keeping his base solid.
Yeah,
From
but
Mr. Trump's point of view, it's probably too much of a political risk to try to widen his constituency. From his point of view, it may actually compromise his base, which thrives on his sense of injustice, victimhood, anger. He articulates what some people are feeling. Some people are, for a variety of reasons, feeling they've not been given a fair shake. And Mr. Trump basically says, look, let me fix that for you. That's the subliminal message.
But maybe that just shows how inexperienced and bad he is at politics, because the people you're talking about, his supporters who are angry, he doesn't need to do anything to get them. That speech at the conference would have given him a chance to get some of those people floating in the middle who could rally around a quote unquote wartime president who's just had an assassination attempt. In fact, watching 2 or 3 different networks who are speaking to undecided voters, how on earth you can be an undecided voter in America, I don't know, but speaking to undecided voters after his speech, many of them were still a bit like, nah, I haven't made my mind up yet. So he lost and missed that opportunity. And then with today's news, you know, that he may not have that same opportunity to be, you know, the individual, and people are going to hate how I describe him, but shining light on a hill. You know, the one that's taking all the oxygen might have ended on Friday. I do want to talk about Biden, but Chewy, do you want to jump in with anything about the convention and the speech last week?
Yeah, I think I'm going to tie the selection of JD Vance into this. That isn't a pick that would widen his appeal. That is a pick to shore up his support within conservatives. It's not broadening his church at all. It's not a skillful operator. He's a relatively new guy as well. And he's going to be turning off people in the middle in a big way. So I think Biden's choice was the only one to make. But this puts Trump in a position of debating a woman, and a non-white woman at that. And that is Trump going to go fully mask off at this point, and it's just going to be wall-to-wall sexism and racism from him and his supporters? I don't think that he would be able to stand up to someone like that in a debate and come off looking good.
And not just a woman, a non-white woman, but also a woman, a non-white woman in a year when women's reproductive rights are on the ballot so clearly, Robert.
I think Chewy's absolutely right. I think when Trump went for JD Vance, there was little sense. I think in Trump's mind, and perhaps some of his advisors, they believed that Joe was going to limp on. The Democrats would not put sufficient pressure to remove Joe Biden. So I think part of the JD Vance Trump pledge at the RNC convention to abolish abortion nationally. I mean, this is what, Vance has gone on record as saying that's what he wants. That, in a sense, was based, I think, partly on the assumption Biden would be there as the principal opponent. I think what we've seen in the last 24 hours are real signs of alarm within the Republican leadership that Kamala Harris she's already, as vice president, established that issue. She's established quite a high profile on that issue of women's reproductive rights. And I think they are getting quite concerned, and they've sort of gone for a preemptive strategy. They're trying, in a sense, to taint her before she's got herself established as the possible Democratic nominee for president. So it's very interesting, but I think this attempt to really concentrate fire on her is a sign of real concern.
And I think you're right.
Like Chewy, I think in a one-to-one between Kamala Harris, who's, let's be quite clear, it's a difficult job being vice president because it's largely ceremonial, and she didn't handle the first responsibility with immigration in a stellar fashion. But in the last 18 months, she has been very prominent on the reproductive rights for women issue. So I think she'd relish the opportunity of taking on Trump. And from the Democrats' point of view, it's much better for a woman of color to be leading on this issue, because in a sense, it's not just another, pale white American male speaking up on behalf of women. It's actually a woman articulating the concern. And I actually think that could make some serious inroads, particularly into centrist Republicans who are unhappy about, if you like, the fundamentalist direction in which the Republican Party seems to be heading.
Yeah, she has some downsides with her own voting base. The whole prosecutor issue, albeit kind of shows she's eloquent and can she argue, but amongst some of the people on the further left, they kind of think the ACAB, all cops are bastards. It's a problem there in this this justice system that likes to throw black men in prison, but she has lots of pros as well. We're going to do these afterwards, but I'll just play this one. Midas Touch put this out today, Robert, and they said Kamala Harris should start running this immediately. Have a look at this advert.
Sick of this? Well, think about this. He's a world leader in temper tantrums. She never loses her cool. She prosecuted sex predators. He is one.
Grab him by the...
She shut down for-profit colleges that swindled Americans. He was a for-profit college.
At Trump University, we teach success.
Literally. He's owned by the big banks. She's the attorney general who beat the biggest banks in America and forced them to pay homeowners $18 billion. He's tearing us apart. She'll bring us together. This is Trump. And in every possible way, this is the anti-Trump. So if that's what you're looking for in your next president, there's really only one. Kamala.
I mean, strong. There's a lot there. There's a lot of meat there. I don't know if that's actually officially an advert, but I think Midas Touch might have just made it and said, we should run this immediately. So it lays it out pretty well there. You can see the argument. I mean, the question will be the bounce that he's going to get in the next few polls because of the assassination attempt, and it will happen. Is there enough time for the Dems to overrun this? Are there enough people still to reach who will get this? And that's what's going to make it. Like I've been saying on Twitter today, this makes this thing interesting again. And most people to the right of me are saying, but it's over. And I'm like, well, maybe you're right. Maybe he wins. But if nothing else, this is now a good run up to the election, and it makes it a lot more interesting again.
I think, Pat, a lot of senior Democrats, one of the reasons they've been putting so much pressure on Joe Biden to reconsider and in fact step down, was because they see Trump as eminently beatable.
Yeah.
And they were alarmed during the debate. They saw him as being wide open because he had such an inability to answer any of the questions. And the thing that frustrated them so enormously was that Joe Biden wasn't able to really put a lot of pressure on Mr. Trump when he was very vulnerable. And
the script is flipped. The script is flipped because now the Democrats can talk about Trump. We'll show this later, but Trump's cognitive decline, and they can talk about Trump's age. And again, you see all over the internet, oh, look, all these lefties now talking about he's too old. And you're like, well, hang on. You said 81 was too old. Trump will be 82 if he gets in and sees the full 4 years. So by your definition, he's too old. What are you talking about? And a lot of the people in the polls have been showing things like 70% of America thought that Joe Biden's cognitive decline should exclude him from the presidential run. What they didn't then mention is 55 to 60% of those same respondents said Trump was as well. And so now he's got that mantle for the Dems to run up against and point out.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very true. And I think the indications are the donors. And what the other striking thing about the last 24 hours, which sort of reinforces the point you've made about the changing dynamics, is how, not only is the fundraising going so well with the change, the anticipated change in leadership, but some of the real heavyweights and would-be rivals to Kamala Harris have piled in behind her. Gavin Newsom, Gretchen Whitmer from Michigan. Virtually all the governors in the United States are supporting her. And the fact that Biden has endorsed Kamala Harris, I think was quite important because, Biden has a long track record in the Democratic Party and he knows how to work smoke-filled rooms and he has long-standing links there. So I don't think we should underestimate the fact that he's backed Kamala Harris. I think that's going to carry some standing. But yeah, I think that the Democrats look suddenly, particularly in the eyes of more young people, more competitive. And
Yes.
I don't think she's going to be able to fix some of the problems that resulted. In the eyes of some young people in the United States, America's position under Biden towards the Gaza crisis has been a disaster. I don't think she's going to fix that, but she has at least emerged as one of the more moderate voices within the Biden administration on Gaza. I think it just makes the Democrats, it energizes them. I think they were almost resigned to being defeated under Biden. And I think now, with 4 months out, was it a British Prime Minister once said, a week is a long time in politics?
Yeah.
I think this can turn around quite rapidly if Kamala Harris lives up to expectations and does really start putting some pressure on the Trump-Vance leadership.
Yeah, for sure. Chewy, you got some stuff there?
I'm just gleefully imagining the
Debates?
the gnashing of teeth in the Republican Party and in Trump's camp when they were so clearly focused on Sleepy Joe, decrepit old Joe, not fit to run, and then they have someone so much younger and so clearly spoiling for a fight after, as you said, playing that ceremonial role for so long. You can almost hear the knuckles cracking. And look, I hope she lands some big hits straight out of the gates. I hope she absolutely goes after Trump for being that sexual predator, for being that person that he's cheated on his wives, he's cheated on his business partners, he's cheated on his suppliers, he's cheated students, he's cheated everyone. So why would this time be any different? Like, if they hammer that point home again and again and again in that incredibly bombastic way that US political ads have, as we saw just before, it's a convincing argument. And I think all of those people that were going, I'm not voting for Joe Biden for a grab bag of reasons, well, now that reason is gone and they can hopefully go, right, forward.
Yeah, and oh, by the way, is it 40 out of 43 of his cabinet have refused to endorse him or say they won't be voting for him. So if you just want to put some sort of experience within the White House on top of that, like 90+% of the people who work with him in positions of power are not going to be voting for him. What else does that say? Robert, you got some stuff to wrap up for us?
Just following up from Chewy's observation that the attack on Kamala Harris is couched in terms that she worked for someone who she knew, that's the vice president, knew was unfit for office. You know, this attack that's developing this evening. And I don't think that's going to have a huge amount of traction, because while there's no doubt about it that Joe Biden is not the same person he was in even 2020. You only have to look at the way he's aged. And I don't think many people would see that as a conspiracy where she, the vice president was, if you like, part of a cabal trying to cover this up. I don't think that's going to wash. And that's how, at the moment, he's insisting that Mr. Trump and his supporters are saying, if he's not standing at the next presidential election, he's not fit to do that, then he should stand down now. And he's also linking it with charges that the vice president's been involved in a cover-up. So it may have a little bit of traction, but I sense it will only work amongst his base. I'm not sure it will really be a big factor, a deterring factor for the swing voters, the people he's got to win over if he's going to be a serious contender for the White House. Yeah,
it's that 30-40-30. 30% are going to be always Trump, 30% are always going to be on whoever's on the left, and it's that 40 in the middle. And like you were saying, Robert, the speech that he gave on Friday our time appealed to that 30, but it appeared to lots of the 40% in the middle didn't really hit the mark. And now that they've got of that 40%, if half of them are female, there's 20% to add to your 30% to put a woman in as president in a year when reproductive rights are on the ballot. It's lots of people are still saying it's all over. I would say it's game on, personally.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Anything to finish off with, Chewy?
I did see a question, and I think it's a good question. Well, we've still got you there, Robert. Who should she pick as VP?
Well, there's been about 4 people touted as VP. And I think one of them there's a Governor Shapiro in Pennsylvania has been another one, Governor Cooper. You know, I think somehow she's been seen campaigning with Governor Cooper, so that may be the person she goes for. I don't know, quite frankly. But 4 names have been touted. I have a feeling also that someone we mentioned, Gretchen Whitmer
that's who I reckon could be
Michigan.
interesting.
Yeah.
But
a double female ticket could be really interesting.
Yeah, I have a feeling she may want to, on balance, go for a male vice president. I don't know, but I think she may think that's the best balance, and may actually may parry some of the charges from. You know, I was watching the program tonight before we came on air, and I was, that some American voters are saying, "Are we ready for a black woman president?" And I think Kamala Harris will be conscious of this sort of concern amongst American voters. So I think she may be, on balance, cautious in that area. And I think the other thing is that many people believe that Gretchen Whitmer has ambitions for the future. So I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. But it is fascinating. And she hasn't got the nomination yet. And the interesting thing is that Mr. Obama has, while he apparently was a key player in persuading Joe Biden to step down, he is not endorsed, unlike the Clintons, has not endorsed publicly yet Kamala Harris.
And neither is Nancy Pelosi, I don't think. They're the kind of 2 names that have been floating around. Well, it's going to be really interesting to watch, Robert. I know it's been a while that we've chatted to you, but we should definitely be getting you on a few more times between now and the election and when appropriate. So thanks so much for joining us this evening, and we will talk to you again super soon.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Professor Robert Patman from the University of Otago. I think Gretchen Whitmer might be, I understand. It's like, Obama, first black president, had to pick the old dusty white man to settle the race nerves. And, I can just imagine certain people going, what if their cycles link up and for a month, a week, a month, we don't have a functioning thing? I'm just saying people would say that, but I would love to see Gretchen Whitmer in there. Gretchen Whitmer would be a great, I'd like to see her actually. Here's the thing, I don't think this will happen, but it would be fascinating to see an open convention like they used to do in the 50s and 60s, where the 3, 4, 5 best candidates actually use that as a nominating thing. Now, I talked previously about the $100 million. Only Biden and Harris are entitled to the Biden War Fund. But what they can do with it is they can pass it off to super PACs, right? But then when you think about it as well, as Robert just said, $60 million raised today. So actually, I don't think the $100 million will be enough for them to say that's the only reason we're going with Kamala Harris, because they'll raise $100 million over a weekend. And some of the big donors haven't released their money now because of the Joe Biden, sanity issues. So I think it'd be, imagine the title, "We're bringing democracy back to the Republic of America, USA," by having an open election, campaign through that DNC. It's 5 weeks away. I think they could, most countries do elections in kind of 5 to 10 weeks total. So I don't know, be interesting. What are your thoughts, Stu?
Yeah, it is interesting again. After that assassination attempt, it was pretty much everyone going, well, that's that decided. I think, and certainly the vibe that I've got from some of my American friends is this is a pinprick of hope that it's not going to be Trump. Yeah. So hopefully.
Yeah.
You can never guess with the American system. It's so fucking weird. Money has such a big impact on it. With Elon saying that he's going to be donating $45 million to Trump every month.
A month. Yeah. Money well spent, Elon. Money well spent.
It definitely puts in perspective, yes, the Democrats have received a funding boost from this announcement. But if Elon's true to his word, and who knows, because he's the king of shit talking, maybe that doesn't matter as much.
Yeah. There's a bunch of stuff I want to show us. There's a couple of attack ads already that are being out against Donald Trump. But this is one. I don't know how much of the actual. I sat there. It was an hour and a half speech. I probably sat there for an hour, and even I went as a political tragic. Oh, I've had enough. But this was a particularly interesting moment. This is his daughter Tiffany.
I love this.
Okay,
I
so
love
people who
this
don't know,
so much.
bottom right-hand corner is his daughter Tiffany. The joke that goes around the internet is he doesn't like her. Like everyone always jokes around about his all his kids.
Know her.
And he doesn't ever mention her name. You watch what he does to Tiffany when she comes up on the stage and she goes in for a kiss. It's like, I'm sorry, love. I don't know who you are. It was short. It was short. And she goes in. No, doesn't even look at her. Look, off you go, Tiffany. No, thanks very much. We'll not have you there. So, yeah. There's a couple of things I do want to play from the Midas Touch, which have done some incredible things. But before we do those, Chewy, there's a couple of chats and stuff in there. Should we get to those?
Yeah, absolutely. What do we got? So Peter with the $5 super chat. I thought Biden would give in when Obama's views were reported. Masterful timing to announce it after the RNC. Trump's lost his one big talking point. Yeah, very good. Very true. Good point, Simon. Yeah, to do it afterwards. I mean, I don't know if it was a master stroke, but or it was a byproduct. But yeah, it certainly serves a purpose. They've taken all the oxygen out of any RNC headline. It's all gone. I also saw a comment that the amount of money that must have been spent on anti-Biden merch at this point, and now they've had to trash all of it.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
I get the sense from reporting that this is something that Biden played pretty close to his chest or decided very much at the last minute. Even his own staff has found out about it.
1 minute. 1 minute before the announcement.
1 minute, which, keeping secrets in politics, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Kiwibird with the $5 super chat. One of these days, you guys should talk to Mary Trump.
I've actually approached her a couple of times in various forms of podcasting, but yep, okay, I'll give it. And she's never replied to anything. Why would she? But I'll give it another go, for sure.
Maybe we should reach out to Tiffany.
Ooh.
And bringing up her total to $10. Kiwibird. The only thing that Trump can unify is chicken McNuggets and ketchup.
All right, is that it for now? Are we going to go look at some of these?
Sorry, just a couple of quick comments. That Kamala ad that you played was from 2020.
Okay,
it was actually an official ad for her from.
So they're saying this needs to be playing now. Obviously, they're meaning it needs to go back on. So yeah, there you go. So that's why. So that would have been playing while she was running to be the nominee before Biden got it. Okay, gotcha.
And a couple of just quick comments there that Pete Buttigieg might be a good pick for VP. Someone that I've seen and been impressed with as well. So yeah. All right.
So let's have a look at a couple of videos that Midas Touch has put out today. The first one, because as I've said, the narrative has changed immediately. The narrative was, Sleepy Joe, Dementia Joe, Joe Biden can only work between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. But of course, underneath that conversation, there has been conversation going, hey guys, let's not forget about Trump and his obvious cognitive decline. So this is what Midas Touch has put out. I think it's been put out today. Have a look.
And my stupid people, when I wanted to refute it, they said, sir, don't dignify it with a rebuttal.
Have you been noticing peculiar behavior recently in someone you know?
Oh, I love this.
Someone who mixes fiction and reality?
The late, great Hannibal Lecter is a wonderful man.
Perhaps someone of advanced age you have known for years.
Did you just see Maduro, Venezuela? It's unbelievable, Venezuela.
Of course, we all have our goofs. But consistently odd behavior can be a sign of frontotemporal dementia, a degenerative disease of the frontal and temporal lobes of the brain that dramatically impairs cognitive function. And there are some key signs to look out for, like slurring words.
The failing New York Times by anonymous, really anonymous.
Struggling to find the correct words is another sign.
The Mueller report, I wish, covered the oranges of the investigation.
You may also notice someone veering into incoherent ideas, detached from reality.
You know what I'd do if there was a shark or you get electrocuted? I'll take electrocution every single time. I'm not getting near the shark.
or an inability to complete simple sentences.
Saudi Arabia and Russia will repeat.
Other notable symptoms include impaired motor function, such as a wavering limb, and decreased balance, often accompanied by a signature lean or arched stance. If someone you know is demonstrating several or all of these symptoms, they are seriously unwell. As a matter of safety, they must be relieved of critical responsibilities and disqualified from any position of authority.
License.
Remember, frontotemporal dementia is a degenerative disease. Cognitive function will never return and will only deteriorate further. Don't ignore the signs.
Trump is not okay, and he's only getting worse. A friendly reminder from the Midas Touch Network. Very, very good ad. Now, what's happening now, though, is you're getting the defenders of Trump, the defenders of the right going, oh, yeah, but what about Joe? And the response, as we've been saying, we said a year ago, if Biden's there, Trump wins. You know, we've been straight up about that here, at least. And it's like, yeah, Trump was worse. But that's like saying you're the second fattest kid at fat camp. So that dude over there is 50 stones and you're 45 stones, or he's 300 kilos and you're 280. You know, you're 20 kilos lighter than him, but you still got a lot of work to do, son. You know, so I think I think now it can come out, and they'll try and push it away, and they'll try and do well, they're just trying hard now because this was a good attack against Joe. But all of that footage is real. It's all for real. It's all legit. If you guys watch David Patman at all, he's got all of those on a soundbar, and he often plays the oranges one, and he plays all of those all the time. So they've been around for a long time, and they'll now start to get used, Chewy. I've got another video, but what are your thoughts, first of all, or anything you want to add?
Yep, no, that's just insane. And I would love if Trump starts getting hammered with exactly the same points that we used against Biden. He is too old. That is just a blanket statement. Yeah. Like, I think when you're in your 80s, you are past the point of being a useful public servant. Yeah. I've said that many, many times. Your experience becomes increasingly irrelevant. As well as the cognitive mental decline as well on such a stressful job. So all of those points that Trump's team have been making, perfectly valid. Agree with them 100%.
100%. Yep. And now we agree with these ones. Well. And the other thing is, this one's probably a bit long to play all the way through, but we'll give you an idea because it's 3 minutes. I don't think we're going to play the full 3 minutes, but if you want to go check it out, it's the Midas Touch Network. Basically talking about mixing up names and getting names wrong. This is 3 minutes of him getting the names of people wrong. You know, so that's what they'd say about Sleepy Joe. You know, he can't. Sleepy Joe. Oh my goodness, he called the guy from Ukraine Putin. He did this. He got the names wrong. It's a sign. It's a sign. Is it? If it's a sign, Exhibit A.
I think you should take a cognitive test like I did. I took a cognitive test and I aced it. Doc Ronnie.
What was it? Elephant
Doc
TV lunchbox.
Does everyone know Ronnie Johnson, congressman from Texas? He was the White House doctor. How good did Elise Stepanek do? You know, we've endorsed Dr. Oz. We've endorsed JP, right? JD Mandel, and he's doing great. Jimmy Connors is good. He's also happy.
Mike Bolton, John Bolton is here.
Mike Bolton, as you know, is in Russia.
And there was progress today. I look forward to solving it.
Thank you, Steve. It was Trump's fault. It's always Trump's fault. Can it ever be like Rick Gates's fault? I mean, it's always Trump's fault, Rick. By the way, they never report the crowd on January 6th. You know, Nikki Haley.
So that was this goes on for 3 minutes. But the point being, and look, we're going to talk about this a little bit more later tonight about the National Party obviously now doing stuff they criticized the last guys for doing. Look, just be honest. You guys said that Biden messing up names, using Putin as the wrong name, etc., was a sign. Well, here's a whole bunch of things. Calling Tim Cook, Tim Apple.
That's my favorite. Tim Apple.
He calls the guy this one here. Not even that. Okay, so he speaks to a Kurdish reporter and he calls him Kurd. Listen,
I may ask Marilyn Lockheed.
We appreciate it very much, Tim Apple.
Yes, please, Mr. Kurd.
Thank you very much for
Mr. Kurd. He called a Kurdish reporter Mr. Kurd. So is that xenophobic, or is that brain fart, or is it all of the above? You know, so I won't play anymore. You get the idea. Go check out Midas Touch if you want to watch the whole thing, but it goes on for 3 minutes. So yeah, okay, sure. calling I can't remember his name, the president of Ukraine, Zelensky, calling him Putin. Yeah, it's a bad balls up. But if, as you guys were saying on the right, that was sign of cognitive decline that can't be come back from, I guess that would make that Exhibit B, would it? Is that Exhibit A? I can't remember which one I called A.
All
so
of
yeah,
the exhibit.
it's and look, I've now sort of been revitalized. I think we did say last week, I think we had the caveat in there that it's Trump's to lose now. And can I say today, he's doing a pretty good job of making that come into a reality. I don't think it's over. I think you'd have to still say, as of today, Trump's still in the driver's seat. But could you imagine a Pete Buttigieg or even like a Kamala Harris in a debate with Trump? Holy shit. Imagine the ratings for that. And I wouldn't be surprised if Trump does no more debates, because he will be, by anyone, say the top 5 choices from the Democrat, any one of them will obliterate him. You know, I think we said last week that when Trump comes out looking at as the competent one in a debate, that just goes to show how far gone Biden came across as. That's not going to happen again. You will not have a Biden to compete against again. It's just, whew. Anyway.
Yeah.
That was me not finishing a sentence like Trump.
Just wander off. Yeah. We'll see. We'll see. We've always got to say we'll see with the US elections because it's just so bananas. But yeah, I would love to see Trump not win, to not inject that level of craziness and toxicity. It's just a fire hose of sewage everywhere, and it's not just in the States, it bleeds onto the rest of us. So I will take a very middle of the road, boring US administration that is very much business as usual over Trump. I would love something more radical. I would love for them to just stop being America for a little bit, but that's a bridge too far.
There is the unfortunate truth that there's probably no great outcome from this election, not to be too much of a Debbie Downer, but if Democrats lose, that means Trump's the president. And if Democrats win, that means those followers of Trump will believe the next lie, and January 6th on steroids could well be happening next. So it's still pretty scary either way. It's pretty scary either way, although one of the two options is more scary, which would be Trump being president.
It would be nice to see America kind of join the rest of the countries in this century, realizing that women can actually do leadership positions. That I know that's crazy. I know women. Why would you do that? But yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. Some chats that have been coming in. Debaser, thank you for the $9 super chat. BHN needs to deep dive into Peter Thiel's backing of JD Vance and his fast tracking of his New Zealand citizenship in 2011. Very dodgy. Yeah,
doesn't even need a deep dive, to be honest. It's super clear. JD Vance is one of these Silicon Valley libertarians that suddenly wants to be part of the government. That they're all working a plan. There's a huge amount of these same people that have managed to acquire bolt holes in relatively remote parts of the world. Peter Thiel did, admittedly, a pretty big donation in the Christchurch rebuild, and John Key just gave him a passport based on that. He's never been here. He wouldn't have qualified under any of the rules that normal people have to follow, but we gave him a passport.
I was listening to, I don't know who it was, it'll be in my YouTube history, but someone was asking about Peter Thiel. And they said, look, I think it just comes down to the simple fact that all these people that are, getting behind the JD Vances of the world are all rich people, and typically the Republicans have outcomes better for those rich people, and it was about as deep as that. So yeah, I don't know. We just need to find who's the other side's version of Peter Thiel. Maybe we could talk to him. We could help him get a citizenship in New Zealand and come and be our sugar daddy for a while. Mata says it was always going to be Kamala, as the fundraising money is only allowed to be spent on Biden and her. Thank you for the super chat. Yeah, look, I think that's a good argument, is the argument I made last week, apart from the fact that when you, I know this sounds really hard saying it like this, true, but it's only 100 million. Sheesh. And like in the last 24 hours, she's raised 60 million. So that 100 million can still go to super PACs. So you could hand that off to, you give 25 million to 4 super PACs who are going to run anti-Trump campaigns right up to the election. And, you know, she'll, whoever it is for the Dems will have hundreds of millions of dollars very quickly. Although I do agree that might be part of the consideration, maybe. Bill B, thank you for the super chat, says, OMG, I can't believe we're doing this again. Comedy gold, LOL. Is that for the election? What's this? What are we doing again?
Oh, yeah, debating Trump again, I would imagine.
Oh, okay, all right. Peter, he had too many illicit substances in the 70s and 80s. And Lurchify, very generous, thank you for the super chat. This is my CrowdStrike IT crash, delayed my pay going through, but now it's in super chat celebration. Yay, sharing is caring. Oh, but thank you, Lurchify. I guess what that means is it impacted his banking, as it did for some people.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm with a local South Island bank, and it didn't impact us at all, but that's fine. All right, let's say a big thanks to all our patrons as well. We normally do this at the start of the show, but, you know, you guys were wanting to get Robert Patman on so very quickly. We've had some more sign-ups this week, so let's say a huge thanks to Dwayne, to Leonie Kasky Hatton, to Tui Girl, and to, you'll like this one, Chewy, Rambling Sid Rumpo, who are all patrons from the last kind of 7 days. If you're enjoying what we do, if you'd like to get behind us and help what we do and support us, you can head to patreon.com/Big Hairy News. And as a reminder as well, one of the things that wonderful patrons help us do is they help us to provide prize money for a something we're looking for at the moment. We're giving away, well, technically, just so you know, we're giving away $250, but one of our lovely supporters out there has agreed to match our $250, so it becomes a $500 prize for someone to write us a new theme song, the theme song that plays out at the end of the show with our credits, and our credits are all our patrons. I suspect we'll probably change the intro music as well. We might do like a 30-second version at the start and a 3-minute version at the end or something. So if and we're gonna close off the competition at the end of this month. So I guess technically that's got about a week. So sort of try and get them in by this weekend if you can. Best part about it, if you want to enter, we've got a few entries coming in there. But you know, $500 for a bit of fun, if you are so musically inclined. And if you want to know anything else, head to our Facebook page, head to my Twitter feed, it's pinned at the top, and or you can email us bighairynews@gmail.com. That's me, Joey. Should we keep talking news, or is there more chats you want to get to? Or
no, there's no chats here. No chat start.
Let's do this. The government has announced today that Health Board, what is it called? New Zealand Health New Zealand, Te Whatu Ora. That's it. See, it's so weird they're going back to these English names so everyone can understand it. I don't know what the fuck these things are called anymore. I just don't know what they're called because I know them as the Māori name. So thanks, National. You made life harder for me. Health New Zealand, the board is to be replaced with a commissioner as agency heads for $1.4 billion deficit. Let me say two things here. One thing, really. Remember, a deficit for a government agency is based on how much the government gives them. So there's two possibilities. One is they're overspending, or two is the government's not funding them well enough. We will never get the answer to that, but what they're saying is from the money we're giving you, you're spending too much. Maybe Health New Zealand is saying we need more money. Just remember, deficit doesn't necessarily bad agency or bad organisation. It could mean bad government not funding the agency well enough. Both could be true. Let's have a listen to what they've had to say, deciding to take an incredibly democratic step to get rid of everyone and put in a czar.
The government has sacked the entire board of Health New Zealand and replaced it with a commissioner amid what it describes as concerns around oversight, overspend and a significant deterioration in financial outlook. Our senior political correspondent Jenna Lynch joins us now from Parliament. Jenna,
hi, Jenna.
So how bad did the government say the books were looking?
$1.4 billion bad. The health minister said that he was alerted by Health New Zealand back in March that they would no longer be able to deliver the savings they had promised, and from there it has only got worse. He says they are now overspending at a rate.
They couldn't deliver the savings, right? So they weren't prepared to cut more out of our public health budget, right? So the board said, remember very clearly at the start, Luxon was all, well, that's up to the CEO, that's up to the chief executive. We don't make those decisions, that's up to them to find it. And we were asking, so what would happen if they said no? If it's really up to the chief executive, if they said no, then what? This is your answer. So if the board said there's no more savings to be made and they still need to make more savings, what happens? Well, we get rid of the board and we bring in a czar.
Rate of $130 million a month. The government was absolutely scathing about the previous government's, what it's called, botched amalgamation of the DHBs.
Of course they were.
New Zealand, they say all that was essentially done was a layer of management was put up over and above the DHBs, but the problems remain underneath them, and it's got to a point where there are now 14 layers of staffing between the patient and the top of the health system. They say that should be whittled down to 6, and that could lead to up to 3,000 job losses. Shane Retty says governance issues, a lack of oversight, all spiralled into this situation.
I wonder how many layers there are between me and the Prime Minister. No, I'm serious. Like, if it's all about this is not working, so if I go to my local MP, or no, I go to my local MP's PA, probably to the receptionist, and then to the PA, and then to my local MP. From there, maybe to their national office. From there to there, you know, like, I wonder if we could work that out. I wonder if it's anything like 14 layers to get to the Prime Minister, because obviously 14 layers, if indeed true, is bad. Wonder how many layers is good.
If it's like a video game, I bet some of the sort of upper mid-level bosses are a social media team, and you've got to defeat them to progress.
All right. Thanks, Jenna.
Where no one had oversight of what was going on.
No one has been adequately watching, and no one has been adequately monitoring the government's single biggest crown entity.
Does anyone believe that?
Yeah. Does anyone find that credible? Nobody's been watching. So in other words, it's crept up behind them and gone, surprise, we're dead. Nobody's been watching. Nobody. Like, not a single person was aware of this debt until they presented it to these this so-called
bananas.
Government. Nobody's been watching though, Chewy.
Now, Shane Retty says he doesn't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. He still thinks that the amalgamation was...
The problem is, in that analogy, he would keep the bathwater and throw the baby out. He wouldn't keep the baby and get rid of the bathwater. That's the problem.
Somewhat a good idea, but he does want to see a more regionalised approach. So he's ordered that he would like to see 4 regionalised areas across New Zealand so that there's a more local lens on what each...
Hang on. A more local lens? You want to make it more localised? It sounds familiar to something that the last government did that was supposed to be bad. Maybe. No? Okay, maybe just me.
Area needs. He's also promising that this cost-cutting exercise will not have an impact on frontline services.
I call bullshit.
What? Utter bullshit.
Pulling money out.
$4 billion worth of cuts. We won't notice it at the front line.
This is what...
Remember when we were talking about the hiring freeze? That wasn't happening. Remember? It absolutely wasn't happening. I bet it's fucking happening.
Yeah.
$1.4 billion worth of cuts.
Yeah, Chewy, this is why we can't ever go to these press conferences. Because if the minister said that from the front, we'd go, I smell bullshit. And we'd get led out by some kind of security person.
Okay, and Jenna, the Prime Minister also made an announcement today about the Royal Commission into Abuse in Care.
Yes, that report is set to be publicly delivered on...
Do I get a cup of tea as well? Is there one coming?
It's very hot.
But do I get one as well? No?
Wednesday, it is going to be a harrowing, difficult read detailing the experiences of children being abused by the people that were supposed to look after them. They were abused by the state. The Prime Minister says it is a shameful part of New Zealand's history and announced today that he will be making a formal public apology to survivors here at Parliament on November the 12th.
Good. Well done, Mr. Luxon. We'll give you credit where credit's due. Good on you for doing that. for taking it on the chin as the representative of the Crown where terrible things have happened. We applaud you. Now, let's get back to the horse fuckery we've been talking about. The bullshit that was coming out of their mouths. I want to play you something, though, as well, Chewy. I put this on my Twitter feed today if people saw it. You'll be amazed, Chewy, that what this government now thinks is, is not acceptable for the last government to do. Let me play it for you and see if you can pick up what it is that seems to have changed in their tone.
When we first came to government, we acknowledged a number of challenges with the governance of Health New Zealand, stemming from the previous government's botched health restructure and appalling implementation, which was delivered against the advice they were provided with.
Hang on. The last government bad because they didn't follow advice. I think that's what he said. Let's listen again.
Government's botched health restructure and appalling implementation, which was delivered against the advice they were provided with and put in place in the middle of a global pandemic.
It was against the advice that was provided for them, Chewy. So this government is saying the previous government was bad because they didn't follow official advice. I wonder when the announcements are going to start from them about things like the insulation regulations changing or smoke-free 2025 coming back, because one remembers this particular government literally saying, the Prime Minister literally saying, we will not be reading those advice. We will not be looking at it. We will not be taking it into account.
And we've seen that. We've seen that. Julianne Genter pointed that out at volume in the House.
Very aggressively.
That people don't read the fucking reports. That is their job. That is what the... Yes. Yeah. But yeah, they are swinging an axe through Te Whatu Ora. And the person that they've chosen as the commissioner, I'm sure you'll be shocked to know this, Pat, in the 90s was very, 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 very pro privatisation of healthcare.
Yeah, funny.
And in fact, has investments in private healthcare.
Yeah.
So, I'm sure that's not a massive conflict of interest at all.
Nothing to do with it. Coincidence.
Just concentrate all of that power of a board into that one person's hands.
Yeah.
At the behest of the government that obviously has a massive hard-on for privatising the things that people in this country own for profit. It's fine. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
Fine.
Don't worry about it. It's great for the people that work in the healthcare industry, that they have gone through years of dealing with a fucking pandemic with everything that comes with that, and they're still bowing and scraping, can we please have a little bit more money, please? Can I please have some more nurses on our ward so we don't all have to be doing overtime and having our leave declined? They'll be stoked about this. $1.4 billion. So, staring down the barrels of that, you're a junior doctor and a nurse, and suddenly in your email box, you get an email from a recruiter saying, hey, ever thought of New South Wales? Ever thought of South Australia? Victoria?
The Gold Coast sound good. Gold Coast.
We'll
pay for you. We'll give you 10 grand to move across. We'll give you 10 grand to move across. We'll pay for your flights. We'll bring your family as well, and we'll pay you 30% more. And come live in the sun.
It's basically already a New Zealand colony. Like, you wouldn't even have to change your accent. It's fine.
I've seen that T-shirt before that's got North Island, South Island, West Island. I have seen that. The government was told of this issue in March, 5 months after they cancelled the merger of DHBs and before the budget, where they got a less than inflation funding increase in order to cut back room staff. Backroom staff. Got it. From Paul, the other one. Thank you, Paul. Appreciate that. Yeah. So there you go. Just, starting the week with a cheer. Oh, look, I've promised you guys this before. When we talk about, horrible things, we need something to make us feel good about stuff.
Twitchy knows. Yeah, and it's good. Isn't it good that Nicola Willis told us that, the tax cuts for landlords was not going to affect frontline services, was not going to lead to mass cuts. No. Cut. Just cuts. Cuts everywhere.
All right.
Death by 1,000 cuts.
Time to move on to talking about some more cuts. Let's talk about the Prime Minister cutting his time away from the media. Apparently, he doesn't want to talk to them as much, funnily enough.
For years, our Prime Ministers have faced important questions just before the House sits.
Prime Minister, why have you decided to U-turn on Kiwi Savings? Prime Minister, what do you make of Labor's water policy?
It's called the Bridge or Tile Run, and is an opportunity to tell the public what's going on.
And he's decided it's in the best interest of himself to stand down from Parliament at the end of this term.
Well, obviously the government's books are in very, very good shape.
But now Christopher Luxon has decided he wants to ditch.
Just a little point, that last sentence by Helen Clark is not something you expect to hear from this government. Hey, the books are in very, very good state. I'm just pointing that out.
The Bridge Run on Tuesdays.
We're going to drop one of the media rounds on a Tuesday. Essentially, in a 24 window period, you get me today in a post cab for 40 minutes or so. You get me on media tomorrow morning doing my media round. You get me on a caucus run, I think, at 10 or 11 o'clock.
You don't see it as an opportunity to speak to the public?
I do, but I think there's heaps of opportunities to do that.
A number of previous Prime Ministers held the same schedule of interviews with media. You're dialing it back.
All you're losing is my tile run, which is 5 minutes on the way into the House.
Do you know what this is? This is a CEO. This is not a politician. This is a CEO saying, I can't afford that 5 minutes. Because, I mean, I guess if you look at it, what he's saying is true. It is only 5 minutes, but also how many of the questions or the like One News or then News Hub 3 News headlines have started with information that was gleaned at that crossover point. And in the bigger scale of things, it might only be 5 minutes, but that's what CEOs say. They say, my time is more valuable than it is to give to you. I'm not going to do it there. We're going to be more efficient, and you're going to get it in other times. So this is CEO Luxon. This is not politician Luxon, Joey.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it's the frequency in that, and you're right. He is downplaying the value to the public that this has to do. And I think there is one thing that I think this comes down to. He can prep for this. He can't prep for that bull run.
Yeah.
And we know that he's not good on his feet, that he needs to be briefed, coached, come up with a game plan of how he's going to talk about these things. He can't react quickly. The other thing I point out is how tired does he look just there?
Well, can I ask, can I also add something in? And I did this today. I reckon it looks like he's put on 20 kilos as well. Now, I'm not saying this to take the piss, right? I'd be the last person to take the piss about putting weight on, but I actually went back to his first one of these from it's about it was January of last year sort of thing, and to be honest, being fair, it was a bit hard to see a huge difference. But it looks like he's put on a shitload of weight as well. Tired. I mean, normally stress causes people to be tired, yes, but it suppresses their appetite. It looks like it's doing the opposite for Mr. Luxon. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's just the angle of the camera or the shading or whatever. But yeah, he looks like he's tired, and he looks like he's put on a bunch of weight as well.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But I think any time a Prime Minister says, I don't want to speak to the public, he's saying, it's just 5 minutes. Don't worry about it. You get all this other time. By the same token, it's just 5 minutes.
Yeah. Yes.
5 minutes out of your day as well. So,
and actually, your number one job is to communicate to the people of New Zealand. That's actually the biggest job. So if you're going, my biggest job, one of my biggest jobs, one of my biggest places I get heard by the people, by my employers, I'm not going to do anymore. It just seems a bit weird. Look, we'll keep going. It's got about 60 seconds.
This former Prime Minister surprised at the move.
Ultimately, if you're the Prime Minister and you're on top of your brief and you know what your government is doing, then answering questions from the media shouldn't be a problem for you.
The only real conclusion that we can kind of draw from this very odd and unprecedented move is that he's looking to escape accountability.
Others just think his move is short-sighted.
The less he decides to speak, the more dangerous it is for him.
Convinced he's missing an opportunity to talk to...
This is very good. This is very good. Check this out.
Voters.
As soon as you start doing that, you get isolated, because any good leader will be able to reach over the heads of the journalists and go through to the people who have faith in him and who want to hear his story.
Other politicians will no doubt be willing to share their reckons. Benedict Collins, One News.
So that's a really good point by Janet Wilson. It's that on some level, if you're competent, the journalists and the questions don't matter, because you're speaking to the people who are watching from the other side of the camera. So yeah, that's a really, really good point, and just a bit weird. Like you say, Drew, you could look at it by saying, I'm only giving up 5 minutes. It doesn't matter to the media, or you could be going, it's only going to take me 5 minutes. So why wouldn't I speak more to the public? And he's chosen to say, it's a waste of my 5 minutes rather than I can utilize this 5 minutes.
Yeah, and it's an absolute gift to Chippy and Chloe.
Yeah,
to sit there and go, well, here's the obvious conclusion. He's not good. He doesn't know, and he doesn't want to front the public. Perfect.
Yeah, 100%. All right, team. Anything in the chat you want to get to before we move on to the next story? Here we go. Stink piss.
Stink piss. A, because of the comment, and B, because of the name. Are we fighting over the comment? No, I want to put it up. I want to put it up.
You can put it up.
Stink piss says Chloe hitting the nail on the head. Yes, absolutely.
As per usual.
Yep.
I want to take it down. If you get to put it up, I get to take it down. There you go. I took it down.
No, look, Pat. Let's agree to not fight over stink piss.
Hey, this is completely out of the blue. I realized in the weekend that I want to find out what glass cleaner Superman used.
What?
You know how glasses get dirty? I want to know what...
You've taken your glasses off. I don't know who you are. You're a stranger to me now.
But that's the point. Clark Kent must have never taken his glasses off to clean them.
Oh, I see where you're going.
Because as soon as he took his glasses off, everyone would have seen Superman. And I'm just wondering if we can find out what he used to clean his glasses. Because mine are always dirty. And he must have put them on and then never taken them off until he was Superman. You know what I'm saying? Just putting it out there.
Point.
Yeah, I thought it was a good point.
Asking questions.
We were just asking questions.
Just asking questions.
Someone else who was just asking questions was old mate Jack Tame in the weekend. He had the climate change minister Simon Watts on. Now,
hey kids, do you want to see a dead body? Because we're going to fucking show you one. Bring your sticks.
I've already put this on my soundbar. I've already put that on my soundbar, just in case we ever need it. In fact, if you follow me on Twitter, you'll have already seen a clip I put together that included that video added to it as well. It's about a 33 minute interview, and it's really dense. I don't mean Simon Watts is dense. I mean the information is dense. There is a lot about emissions. There is a lot about climate in there. Honestly, you should go and check it out if you want to go deep into the weeds on climate issues. You should go and have a look at the interview. It is dense. It is full of information. I pulled out two that I want to talk to you about, and then the third one's one of these. Yeah, that's the third one. So that'll be the third one. But the first two are actually serious ones. So this is what I talked about earlier to do with methane inhibitors. So this government has decided the future, rather than having to put restrictions on agriculture, the future is to use methane inhibitors, right? And they're used to counteract emissions, but we find out that they may not exist quite as national as either promising or maybe dreaming of.
You say that a methane inhibitor could be available for dairy cattle in 2027. What is that methane inhibitor?
So there's a number of those examples that are currently in trials. I haven't got the exact name of that product, but what I do advise.
Well, there's a lot of hope being put in these technologies.
Yeah.
So you must.
So I'll give you a flavour of how the plan was put together. Each relevant.
So it's pretty clear. You're talking about methane inhibitors. What are they exactly? Which ones are you talking about? I don't know if he's going to give an answer. Where are you going, dog? Oi, get back on your mat. What are you talking about? You're our first.
You can't run away. You're vital for the whole operation.
You're our thirst trap. You got to stay there, or everyone will leave.
So talk to me about the methane inhibitors, because this is absolutely vital, though.
It is, and what I'm going to say will answer that. Minister Macleay is responsible for putting together the agricultural chapter of this thing, alongside Forestry, Minister Brown for Transport and Energy. Those agencies have put together the actual aspect. You're in charge of our climate path and our path to emissions reductions. So surely you would understand the technologies which are central
to reducing emissions in our biggest emitting sector?
So getting into the specifics, AgriZero, which is a private partnership entity funded with government money, is working on a number of these products at the moment. There is actually a number of these in trial and development phase. And, you know, well, I don't have the exact names of each one. There are a number. We've given EcoPond, which is an example within our plan, which is available out there in the market.
I'm specifically asking about the methane inhibitors, though. Sorry, because the Climate Change Commission has considered these technologies as well. And in their most recent advice from last month, they talked about 2 different products. So there's 3-NOP or 3-NOP, which is a methane inhibitor, but that's targeted as a feed supplement. And of course, New Zealand prides itself on pastoral farming, not on feeding cows out of buckets. The other one is a slow-release bolus methane inhibitor, but here's what the Climate Change Commission says, quote, "There is a slow-release bolus methane inhibitor in development that could be better suited to reducing methane emissions from domestic dairy production," so that's us. "Our evidence suggests that these may not be available commercially until 2039. So my question is, why does your emissions reduction plan suggest that that technology could be available 12 years earlier?
Yeah, well, the advice that we've got and we're using in our plan is based on the latest advice from officials in MPI in regard.
The advice is based on the latest advice. Just checking in with what he's actually saying. So the advice that they've got is based on the advice that they've got, Joey. Just helping with a little translation here.
As to the opportunities that are out there in conjunction with feedback from players such as AgriZero.
The advice that we've got is based on the advice that we've got, and we're getting feedback from people giving us advice. It's actually what he's just said.
Other participants. The example around the supplements for cows, and I come off a farming background, so I can talk to this, is that the ability for the cows to consume one of those supplements while they're going through the milking process is something that is being trialled at the moment. That has some pretty significant upside in terms of methane reduction. But let's get back to the core point here. New Zealand farm.
No, the core point was, what are the names of these things you're promising us? That was it. This is called you changing the narrative.
Have the ability, and I back New Zealand farmers, in order to come up with the solutions to what is probably one of the most significant global challenges in climate change, which is...
I back New Zealand farmers to come up with a solution to the methane that the cows produce. Oh yeah, what are farmers going to do about that? I'd like to know, because if farmers could come up with that, they would be godzillionaires selling that product all over the world to get rid of methane, but New Zealand farmers are going to do that.
Biogenic methane and reducing livestock emissions. There is no other, a commercialisation of scale in the world today, and hence why we say pricing alone in absence of investment in R&D is not a pragmatic pathway. We need to do both, and we're committed to doing both.
I think
but there is risk that comes with R&D, right?
Yes, there is risk
that comes with innovation. But I tell you what, the risk of doing nothing, Jack. The risk of doing nothing.
Well, that's what you're doing at the moment. No, that's what you're doing at the moment, because you've delayed. I mean, our emissions pricing is exactly the same it has been forever when it comes to agriculture.
We're investing $400 million in R&D to come up with a solution and a breakthrough in this space. That's not doing nothing.
And what happens if it doesn't work?
Well, I can tell you what, doing nothing will not work, and we're not doing that. We have to make sure that we're putting, a number of, we're spreading our options in terms of
my question is, what happens if it doesn't work? What if these methane inhibitors don't work? What if they're suited to feedlot farming as opposed to pastoral farming, and we can't reduce methane through technology?
That is a scenario that potentially is at play. But the reality is we're exploring
what happens if that's the case then?
Well, hence in our schedule within our plan, there's not just one option sitting there. There's actually 3 or 4 different options that we've
relying on that option.
Well, we have to rely on research and development.
You're relying on something you've just acknowledged might not work.
Well, I think, as you know, with any research and development, take away climate change, put that in any context, there is always a degree of risk around that, right? And I don't think that's unreasonable.
This is, in the eyes of some people, an existential crisis.
Yes. So, there's a really interesting vibe of Simon Watts, and you'll see it really in the last clip that I'm going to play. That was the longest of the clips, by the way. But the last clip, when Jack is doing this to him... He just sits there and just takes it. Like, honestly, there's a strange vibe about him. Like, you watch Luxon, or you watch, the people who are best at it, like the Winstons or the David Seymours, just stopping the conversation and rejecting it. He just sits there and just takes it and then responds. Now, you might say that's actually quite a nice change, that they're not that bombastic and they're not going to, get all on the wrong side of things and that. But yeah, it's weird seeing someone being beaten down so much and just sitting there and going, okay, I'll take it. Sorry, Chewy, what you got?
Just his plea to go easy was from a farming background. Fantastic. What farming background? Are you talking about the farming background that lets you know what the average Fonterra share price is? What milk solids are running for on the commodities market? Is it that sort of farming, or is it in the area of farming that's concerned about these sort of things, concerned about what it's doing to the climate, how exposed New Zealand farmers are, where we have all of our eggs in one basket, but those eggs are all dairy cows. We're incredibly exposed. If someone comes up with a better technology, we're fucked. And if the climate changes significantly, farmers are fucked, and they will be the first with their hands out to go, no food, no future. As far as like methane inhibitors, at the moment, I'd have more trust in this guy as he says, look, we've developed it in-house. It is literally a bung for every cow's asshole. We'll bottle it somehow. I don't know. Fuck, Jack. Why are you being so mean to me, bro? You were nice to me in the green room. Why are you being so mean to me now? What politician nowadays, like Jack has been around the block for a little while now. What are you doing on Sunday? I'm going to go and see Jack Tame to be on a show. Cool. Are you across your portfolio? Do you have the answers to the obvious questions he's going to ask you? Nah, I'm just going to wing it because I own a farm, so it should be sweet. Like, what a knob. Just a knob.
Earlier in the interview, like I said, it's a dense interview. You should go and have a look at it if it's an area of interest to you. They were talking about hitting and missing our targets. And all this, I trust farmers. Farmers understand. Farmers will do it right. The danger is if we miss that 2030 target, or 2050, I think is after that target, we're ineligible to trade with the EU. So what we've been signed up to, whether you think it's right or wrong, whether you support it or not, if we miss those targets, we are up the shtook. You might see prices of lamb drop dramatically in New Zealand because they're not be allowed to go anywhere else in the world.
You heard it here first, people. $4 blocks of cheese. Let's crash those climate targets.
And I think
I never liked glaciers.
I think the two that they're looking for is 2025, 2030, 2050. Whatever the newest one is, we're on target to hit, but we're not to hit the next two. So what this government's literally doing right now could impact farmers in a hugely negative way in 10 years from now. Because if what we're doing now puts us further behind the eight ball to not be able to hit those emissions targets, then farmers in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years from now are poked, 100% poked. So there you go. There's another interesting part of the conversation I pulled out, Chewy, and I think you'll like this in particular. Well, sorry, like is probably the wrong word, but I pulled this out in particular for you and me to go over because they're talking about the EV car market and what they've done to the EV car market. And this bonehead decides to start telling Jack Tame how the sales of EVs have started to increasing the sales of EVs. Let's have a listen to let's have a listen.
We are seeing that actually EV sales, and I said look at the data this morning, is starting to increase.
So what are the EV sales?
So I think at the moment, the latest data that I had from officials was around 8.9% sales increase.
So at their highest point, what were their highest point under the previous policy?
I haven't got that number right.
Almost 20%.
Right.
And so in the first 3 months of this year, I think sales of EVs slumped 75% compared to last year in New Zealand. So less than 1 in 20 new cars in March registered in New Zealand was an EV.
1 in 20. It was 1 in 5. It was 1 in 5 new cars. 1 in 5 under the last government. It's now 1 in 20. And what he's saying is now 8%. Okay, so that's 1.5 in 20. 1 in 20 versus 1 in 5. So it's decimated.
That's coming from.
Yeah,
I'll tell you where that's coming from. That's coming from manufacturers slashing stock to move some product.
Yep,
like
that's what I did.
You took advantage of that, right? But you've got a couple of key models, key big sellers in New Zealand, like BYDs, that are coming at the end of their model run. And so you're seeing like $3,000 or $4,000 discounts. And that's what that spike is. Nothing to do with what these guys are doing.
Yep.
Or not
the
doing
spike,
around EVs.
And get what he's saying. He says that this is what he's saying. EV sales are increasing. So yeah, they were 5% when these guys took over. It's now 8%. But under the last lot, it was 20%. So you can't say we're seeing the number of EV sales going up when you've still dropped by whatever that makes it, 12 or 13% more. You haven't caught up to under Labour yet. Sorry, Chewy.
And again, that absolutely key thing, I'm going to drop the thing of 8%. Do I think that Jack Tame is going to ask me for some context on that number and have that context immediately to hand? I'm sure he won't. I think it'll be fine. Let's see how it pans out.
Well, let's keep going.
Annihilated. And look at how upset that man is.
That's what I was saying, how he comes across on screen.
Fuck.
It feels like he is is it the lamb to slaughter? Is that the saying? You lead a lamb to slaughter, lead something to slaughter, whatever. But he's the sacrifice that the National Party's put up, where they know they can't defend their policies, and he's the guy who has to sit there and look more and more wistful and think. Right now he's thinking about the farms on his cows, the cows on his farm. That's where he is right now in his head.
They never gave him back chat.
No,
they know what happened.
All right, let's get to the end of this.
Well, let's be clear.
So you tank that market
well, let's be clear. Also, when people are facing a deficit and a cost of living crisis, buying a car isn't the big priority for a household budget. And so there's a number of factors at play here. But what we can see is that EV sales in the first 6 months of this year is increasing.
If you couldn't afford a phone or a computer, like a laptop, would you care if I gave you free Wi-Fi?
Well, I don't...
Bear with us here, people. This is a good point. So, if you couldn't afford a phone, if I said you're allowed all the free laptop you want, but you couldn't afford the phone, what would be the point? He's going somewhere. He is going somewhere. Joey, you may have picked up on it already, but he is going somewhere.
I don't necessarily see that. The reality is, in that example, a lot of Kiwis have got those assets.
Would you care? So what you're saying is you are incentivising people who've already been able to take advantage of the clean car discount to now have easier charging as well.
It's interesting when you talk with other ministers.
Why are you investing in people who've already benefited from that?
Well,
this might have been said before we started this clip. He's now talking about the government's desire to build 10,000 more fast chargers around the country,
which have already walked back.
Yeah, but
the timeline and the money is fucked. It doesn't add up.
But the point that Jack's making is, if fewer and fewer and fewer people are getting EVs because of you decimating the market, that means the 10,000 new EV fast chargers are actually going to go to the people who took advantage of the EV discount under Labour. So you're not doing anything for anyone by offering this quote unquote free Wi-Fi or new fast charger network. We'll get back to it.
The challenges that is highlighted is that people have challenges around range anxiety with EV vehicles, i.e. they have the inability to charge their vehicles is an issue for them when they're considering
I understand range anxiety, but these people already have vehicles. They already benefited from several $1,000s in subsidies under the previous government, and now you're giving them fast charging as well.
When someone is considering buying an EV vehicle today, if one of their issues and concerns is around not an inability to charge, knowing that this government is investing in that charging network between now and 2030 is a positive. And by the way, we're not the only government in the world looking at this.
We're not the worst. Others are bad as well. Don't just pick on me.
Positive. And by the way, we're not the only government in the world looking at this.
No, but you were looking to offset the clean car discount in some way at the very least. So not completely, but with this policy.
But we can talk about a number of other...
I noticed that 80% of people charge their EVs at home the majority of the time, according to the EECA. And so that's who we're choosing to invest in.
And the other point that was made during that conversation, perhaps before we picked it up, is wouldn't that money that you're going to put into the fast charging network be better spent putting into getting people into EVs? So rather than building the fast charging network to help the people who are already taking advantage of the EV car sales, how about helping people buy EVs, and then when they take it up, we can start thinking about the fast charging network as well, considering 80% of the charges happen in people's homes. Chewy, you must have something to say about the EV stuff, mate.
Yes, because this is a button issue of mine. I have an EV. It doesn't have a ton of range. You know, it'll do 200 kilometers an hour. It's over 5 years old. 200 kilometers on a charge. It's over 5 years old. You go and buy a new EV at the moment, you're going to get something with 350 plus kilometers of range. Range anxiety is an old issue. There's only an issue for people buying old, clapped out secondhand Leafs that'll do 80 Ks on a charge. At the moment, if you're traveling any of the major highways and that sort of thing, there's a charger on average every 80 Ks. So, you know, if this government wanted to do something about that and say that range anxiety is an issue for someone with an EV, why aren't they putting that money, which, let's be fair, they're talking about increasing charges on a network. They're giving public money to private companies that are then going to sell that product. You know, why do they not take that public money and say, hey, look, you can apply for a grant to put in a home charger? Because that's where most of EV charging goes.
Yeah.
Or maybe they go, hey, look, we've got concerns about the grid being able to handle a whole bunch of new EVs. So you can apply for a solar grant because there's heaps of downstream benefits for that.
Yeah.
You know, they're not thinking of this. It is still socialism for private companies.
We're going to wrap up the conversation because just a little 90-second bit at the end where Jack Tame, you know, this is the part of the conversation, and also we want to play this right to the end because at the very end, because this was a pre-recorded interview, after it, Jack Tame comes back with a little fact check as well to make sure he's keeping you hate to see keeping them honest. Here we go.
I mean, your entire plan revolves around the central premise. You want to get to our targets the cheapest way possible, right?
And that's the premise of this whole government. This is all we constantly talk about. They're not worrying about the outcomes, the goods, the bad. They're just worrying about getting to position B as inexpensively as possible, spending the least amount. That is their focus in every decision they're making. How can we get there cheaper? Because we need money for landlords and money for tax cuts. So that's always what their decisions are about. How does this affect my bottom line?
And yet, considering this emissions reduction plan, Labor's plan would have seen household consumption reduced by 0.4%. Your government's reduces it by 0.39%. 0.1% cheaper.
So that's 0.01. He made a mistake there. 0.0. So all of the things that this government's now either introducing or removing is changing our outcome by 0.01%. So that's 1/10. No, it's not. It's 1/100th, isn't it, of 1%, 0.01. So all of these negative impacts are making no difference and costing New Zealanders more.
It's 2024. Last year was the hottest year on record. Climate scientists say this year is likely to be even hotter. Your government has scrapped the ban on oil and gas exploration. You've tanked the electrical vehicle market overnight. You've delayed emissions pricing yet again for our biggest emitting industry. You've taken money from the Climate Fund to pay for tax cuts. Your plan fails to get us to our 2035 or 2050 targets, and despite your promises to save us money, it's 0.01% cheaper for households. Why should anyone believe you are serious about climate change?
Jack, our plan demonstrates that we will hit our targets by 2025 and 2030. The purpose of this plan is to provide a pathway to get to 2030, and we have done that. We all acknowledge that the challenges ahead of us are significant in regards to dealing with climate change, but we're also dealing with a situation where the New Zealand economy is in a very fragile position. We have to find a pathway that both achieves our emissions reduction targets and also protects our economy. And I'm confident...
Which you can't do. I would submit that you can do one or the other. You can't do both. And under the current scheme, you can't do both. You can do one or the other, and they're choosing the financial rather than the ecological, Chewy.
I don't even think that that's true. Like, you can make money out of new technologies.
You can. They can't. Yeah. They haven't shown that.
No.
Yeah, it's possible
they haven't shown the leadership or
they
the
haven't
vision.
demonstrated it. Yeah. All right. This has got about 60 seconds to go.
That the plan in which we've tabled allows us to do that. Does that ignore the fact that there aren't challenges on the horizon. No, it does not. We acknowledge that. But I can tell you what, as a coalition government, we are committed to taking the actions required in order to reduce emissions while protecting and growing our economy. And we've got a plan that delivers that. I know it's going to be challenging.
It's funny. We've got to believe them because they haven't shown us that. They say they have, but they haven't shown it to us.
Challenging in the future. We're pragmatic and we understand that. But you can't do one while sacrificing the other.
The whole point, though, is that you are increasing emissions by your own comments in this interview. You are increasing emissions compared to the previous government and saving us no money by 2050.
You're talking in the degree of
0.01%.
The numbers in terms of 1 megaton, all those are
no. This is the. I'm going from the numbers on economic consumption in your own plan. It's 0.01%.
As I said, the plan that we've tabled will meet our budgets by 2030 and 2025.
We'll meet our budgets. Well, just check. We'll meet our budgets. Budgets.
Margin at 2050, which is 25 years out from now, is plus or minus 3 megaton. As I said, TY's implication is 5 in one period. We're at the margins, but we are committed to meeting our targets.
Climate Change Minister Simon Watts there. And just a little fact check, according to the government's advice, delaying agricultural emissions pricing will result in 1.9 megatons, or 1.9 million tonnes of emissions by 2030, not 0.9 as the minister stated.
It's quite a big
tiny little error there.
What the difference between 0.9 and 1.9? Yes, it's more than double.
Fiddling around the edges. It's fine. It's fine. We're not facing an existential threat. It's fine. We don't need to make those big choices. We definitely don't want to piss off the farming lobby and give them a reality check that shit is not going to stay the same for them, whether they like it or not. Yeah. And it's either adjust the way that you do things, or the climate's going to adjust your shit very rapidly.
Well, even you can even go on a more selfish bent for that. Adjust what you're doing, or in 15 years, your children who are going to take over your farm will have no countries to trade with, because we'll have missed our emissions targets. Even you want to, look, I'm okay with you making a selfish decision if that selfish decision gets us to the same outcome, right? Don't be big and existential and think world climate change. Think about my grandsons, how I'm now growing up on my grandfather's farm, and my grandsons will be growing up on my farm. If we don't do this and hit these targets right, then the farm they have might as well be a car park or rugby fields, because we won't be able to sell our product.
Farmers on multi-generational farms can just talk to their granddad. So see how he remembers when our English markets dried up, and the damage that did to the farming community, which they still remember and they still blame on Labour. Yeah. Are they going to appropriate the blame for what is coming to National just nodding and going, no, you don't have to do anything. It's fine. We'll manage it. Don't worry about it. We don't want to piss off your cows. It's just remarkable.
Yeah.
How stuck these guys are.
That's true.
The man's a dimwit, and Jack Tame just fucking dog walked him up and down the street for all.
Do you know what I mean
by
how he looked? How he looked though? He was just like
he looked like
I'm resigned to the fact that I'm getting a beating.
I know that feeling from like school when teachers berating your poor report, your lack of, and you just sitting there going, yeah, I guess I did fuck that up.
Yeah.
For like way too long.
Yeah.
Way too long.
Alrighty, it's been a good night, team. Thank you again to Professor Rob Patman for coming on board. Interesting to watch what's happening with Trump in America over the next wee while. A couple of last comments to finish up with here in the chat. Juan says they don't even have a carbon footprint measuring device, so how can create figure based on nothing? And Paul, the other one, says Luxon also has no portfolios and now less media interaction. So what does he do again? He's middle management, Paul. Yeah,
he's eating pies. Tackling the catering table.
All right, well, that's us for the night, Jerry. Is there anything you want to wrap up with before we head off?
I have two real quick tangents, because I know we've blasted through the 90-minute hour. There's a couple of key submissions that are closing, so if you're looking for something to do later on tonight or tomorrow, Two quite important ones considering some of the things that we have been talking about on the show here. Reinstating of the 3 strikes amendment. So that closes at midnight tomorrow.
And isn't the first reading of the Treaty Principles Bill happening this week?
I believe that is correct. Yes.
Right. We need some guests.
So we know that the 3 strikes bill doesn't work. Make a submission. Tell them so. And then the other really important one, education and training amendment bill. Repealing the early childhood ECE network approval provisions, providing a new type of schools, that's your charter schools, and allowing state schools to convert to charter schools is a fantastic way to spend 6 times the amount of money per student.
Yeah.
That's only for charter schools, not state schools. They can't pour money into state schools for some unknown reasons. Enabling the Secretary for Education to make rules around the form and contents of attendance data that schools are required to provide. So 2 very key submissions closing in the next day or 2. So get on to that. And then the other thing that I found really interesting, where is it?
It's on that number 300. It's on that 300th tab you've got still open.
Yep, absolutely. Inter-Islander ferries in better condition than expected, report finds. Isn't that interesting? That they are both terribly run and managed and literally falling apart. But at the same time, when we really need them, the reports say that they're actually good. So what is it? Is it Kiwi Rail can run a ferry service or they can't? Pick one.
Yeah. Yes. No, sir. Good point. Been a good show, team. It's been a good one. I've enjoyed it a lot.
And sure, they got the news. Big Harry style.
Big Harry style.
Loose. New Zealand, where the politics play. They bring the truth every single day. Talking about the mess all over the land. They shine a light with a mic in their hand. No time for cheese, just facts straight up. Bad and true, never backing up. From the Cape to Bluff, no place too far. They expose the truth and raise the bar. Politicians tremble at their mighty voice. Pat and chew, they'll make the right choice.
All right, team, that's us for another night. We'll catch you tomorrow night from 9 p.m. for another edition of Big Hairy News. Remember, get your submissions in as soon as possible if you want to be the winner of $500 cash and the writer of our new theme song, which we're playing now with all these names running alongside of it. And if you'd like to be one of these names and support what we do, head to patreon.com/Big Hairy News. Those competition details are on the Facebook page and on my personal Twitter feed as well, at Pat Brittenden. Chewy!
Get those submissions in, both for our theme song and to try and stop the government doing more stupid shit. We'll see
Which
you
is more important? More important for the theme song or
both
for the government?
Equally, or they're both existential threats. Get on to it.
All right. We'll catch you tomorrow night from 9 p.m. for another live one. Hooroo, team.
Cheers, man.